Pat, something you mentioned there to pick up on. So with 11 plus keeper back, it's probably easier for the attacking team to keep the ball. So, Armagh, say on the Saturday game, in particular, were patient in their build-up. Patient in their build-up is kind of a euphemism, I suppose. But it was striking when the ball was fed into Murphy, like kicked into Murphy. It was kicked into him 3 times in the first half. The first one, they were so panicked. I'm not sure was it Forker or Cambridge, but either way, he was fouled and it was an easy free. The second ball that was kicked into Murphy, he scored off. And the third, like the way he fought like a bear and won it on the ground and gave it to Oisin Gallen. So that was a really good return. And then for Armagh, they kicked it in twice. Grugan into Turbot, he won it and scored. Oisin O'Neill scored off it. And the other one went out for a 45. So again, it was a pretty good return from just the 2 balls they kicked in. And weirdly, McGuinness said afterwards, I was reading the quote, he was talking about the ball into Murphy for the brilliant catch. He said, it was just a great ball by Finbar. There's not many of those kicks in the game at the minute, which is weird because of the mark. And you're sort of thinking, well, you could actually get them to do it a bit more if you asked them. We did see a fair amount of conservatism, keeping the ball in hand, not letting balls into someone like Murphy, I thought. Are we going to see teams grow into kicking the ball more?
I think we will, because I always think that Croke Park is the ideal pitch for the new rules. It's the ideal pitch for a team with a kicking game. That's why Croke Park, under the new rules, will be absolutely brilliant for Kerry, because at the moment they are the one team that's kicking the ball, that's moving the ball quickly and into space. I mean, the stats here, and you're right, in the first half yesterday, or in Saturday in the Ulster final, there was no doubt about it. Donegal brought a little bit more variety than we expected their attack, and they certainly had a kicking element to their game. They certainly used Michael Murphy at times. Their 2-point shooting was absolutely brilliant. Funny enough, as the game went on, they sort of got stuck into the process again, and it was about keeping possession, recycling. I can think of the classic moment when Padder Morgan broke through in the second half at a vital stage. Okay, he was on his wrong foot, but he wasn't going to take a chance. He wasn't going to take a low percentage shot. He stopped and he recycled it back again. So there was a lot of element to that. They sort of drifted into old habits the longer the game went on.
Yeah.
But when you talk about keeping possession, I mean, there's no doubt about it. I look at the teams there now. I look at Louth and I look at Donegal, and they're very much that zonal defence. They're very much a carrying team. They can pass the ball. They're not a kicking team. But the stats, I don't know whether you came across them, but I came across them today. The stats for the last 7 minutes of the Leinster final were just unreal. So on 62 minutes and 56 seconds, that's with 7 minutes and 4 seconds to go, there was a turnover. Bevan Duffy turned over the ball. Right. For 7 minutes and 4 seconds, the rest of the game, only one Meath player touched the ball. In that 7 minutes and 14 seconds, Louth had 81 passes and scored 3 points. And in one passage of play, they kept the ball for almost 4 minutes and 60 passes. Like, it was brilliant game management. Is it good from a spectator? No. But I genuinely believe I'm seeing a little bit of innovation. And as a forward, the innovation I'm looking at is the screening and setting up the space for the 2-point shots. I think that's brilliant. The innovation with Patton, but in particular using Ethan Rafferty last Saturday night, absolutely brilliant. I genuinely believe that the Louths and even Donegals and even Armaghs, unless they bring more of a kicking game into Croke Park, that they might come up short.
Yeah. Philly, curious for your thoughts on that? Ball's not being kicked into that full forward line.
Yeah, well, the McGuinness's quote there, I've been kind of saying to myself, and I've said it up in working with BBC, they didn't bring Michael Murphy back just to be a pivot. There was a certain point where they were going to, with these new rules in the space, that they were going to exploit that long ball in to a big man like Murphy, and in a way, you would think McGuinness would have held that back for an important game. So it show you how much it's important to him. Instead of him saying, let's not do that, let's hold that off until a big game that we meet Kerry, Dublin.
Yeah.
Or it showed you how important it was to actually play that card against Armagh. What is very interesting for me working at that game and watching Murphy as a fullback is his movement and his separation was unreal. It's the best I've seen him in a while. Like, obviously he's only back, but when I marked Murphy, his separation wasn't good. I was able to kind of get my arm around him and, you know, stop his initial run or movement. He would make a run against Forker, stop, make a run again. And this is for kickouts, this is for running for the ball into him as a full forward. And don't forget, he makes the tackle out around the midfield. I can't remember the Armagh player, but the Armagh player touched the ball on the ground.
Yes.
In a pivotal moment. That's Armagh's last play to try get that score. And he makes that tackle back. After being out again for a while, and it was extremely hot up there, and the game was hectic, it was end to end. People will look at those 3 balls, like the crossfield ball that he caught with one hand, that the ref gave him a free for. It wasn't a free, but it was a mark. It was a brilliant mark.
Yeah.
The ball we talk about, the high one in, where he loses the ball, but he battles on the ground. Yeah. You know, that's
first he was fouled for it. So
that's leadership in itself. You know,
would you not be thinking that seems to be going pretty well? Everyone, let's lob another 3 in on top of him.
The percentages of you, like, so the risk is here, right? Okay, if you hit a high ball, if you're a target man, and again, this is coming from someone who's marked most of the target men that teams would have, like Donaghy, O'Shea, Leinster, Newman was a big man in Meath, Tony Kingston, Leash, all of these lads I had to pick up. When they kick that ball in, I'd say the numbers are really low in terms of the return they get, right? Because all you really have to do is know how to mark that particular player. So Forker was marking for the kickouts. Let's say Forker was marking from behind, which was mad because all he needed to do was to stop Murphy was actually running onto the ball. So if you just stop his run, then it's preventing him making a movement to get momentum to catch the ball. But for me, the percentages are quite low, and the return is that if you kick a ball in on top of Murphy and you break that ball, and everybody's conscious around you that Murphy's in there, bodies come in and receive the second phase of the ball, and you go up and get a score, that's a 2-point turnaround, right? But what it can do is if you see Murphy behind you and you don't kick the ball in, like you'll see with Aidan O'Shea to an extent, they'll all start gravitating out towards the middle of the pitch. And then you're going, right, okay, the threat's not in there, now we can. But if you kick a few high balls in like Donegal did, that stretches the Armagh fence a bit further back to protect that full back line so there's no goal opportunities. So it's all about a game of chess, really. Like, it's not so much what return you get off Murphy getting that high ball in there. It's the perception of structurally, defensively, what happens to the opposition then. Do they go back and support who the man is on Murphy? And I think Murphy, for me, he brought back the years there. His movement was excellent. He didn't do anything silly, which he's always very good at. He's always very pivoting, getting a little hand pass, moving, and gravitating men towards him from the opposition defence point of view. But yeah, I would imagine, particularly if you can win the opposition's kick out, that we'll see a lot more high balls being pumped in, particularly diagonal.
Okay.
But sorry, lads, just to get back to there, and we're talking about that Donegal the last day did use the kick ball in for a while. It was interesting, like I said, there was one interesting stat for a start, that Armagh over the course of the game got off 7 more shots at goal than Donegal. But I again alluded earlier on about in the second half, that Donegal went back to the process, went back to the possession game, more running in transition, more carrying the ball in transition. And you look at, in the first half, Murphy was playing very well. Oisín Gallen was having an absolute blinder. Paddy McBrearty was doing fine. In the second half, they started carrying the ball in transition. They started being careful. None of the kicking game. And you look at Gallen disappeared in the second half. Paddy McBrearty was replaced. And the only one of the full forward line that scored in the last 35 minutes plus 20 minutes and 55 minutes, the only full forward scored was Michael Murphy. They stopped that kicking game. So I really believe that Jim is a very innovative coach, but if Jim was going, there's one other thing as well.
Yeah. In
Croke Park, right, you're 3 up. Nowadays, the importance of pace the importance of pace, creating space and getting that ball into space is vital. Michael Murphy is unbelievably fit. 70 minutes? Well, he lasted to 76 the last day, but pace in Croke Park, McBrearty isn't blessed with pace. Michael Murphy isn't blessed with pace. I'm not saying it's going to cost them, but it could come against them in the latter stages.
Yeah.
Can I jump in there, Pat? I'm not sure what you mean by a kicking game. I don't think Donegal played a kicking game in the first half. They kicked 3 balls in. I get that. But a kicking game for me is as soon as you get the ball, everybody's moving by foot to an extent. A little bit of a hand pass there and there, but everything's moved quicker. Takes about 10-15 seconds to get up to a scoring zone. Gallen got his scores from little hand passes around the loop, coming in off his right foot. And something that you mentioned, Pat, there about them slowing down and having that little kind of patience, hand passing. That's what Donegal do unbelievably well. Donegal's shot would have less in the Ulster Championship. Donegal would have less shots than Armagh would. So Armagh have more shots, all right, but their efficiency is lower than Donegal. So Donegal, they're two different. You might say, well, because Donegal won the Ulster Championship, that's the way to go. But they've two different methods. It's about quantity in terms of Armagh, getting up, getting shots off, but their efficiency is a little bit lower. But Donegal are the opposite. Donegal, it's about every chance you get to get them scores is what they're trying to do. And their percentages, I'm telling you, are all-Ireland win type percentages. The shot to score ratio was, before the game, the Ulster final, was about 75%.
Yeah.
That's unreal numbers.
Yeah.
So what they do works for them.
Do you want to come back in, Pat, and what the difference you saw?
They weren't kicking every ball in, but it was the first time that there was a little bit of variety in their attack in that first half, where they were using Michael Murphy at the edge of the square. But look, at the end of the day, we can talk about their shooting efficiency. Donegal's shooting efficiency in the first half, the last day was 75%. That's wow. That's absolutely brilliant. But you can also look at it. It's a very simple rule of thumb. And it's, the old sayings from Gaelic football. And, sometimes they never change. Goals win matches. Yeah. Kerry scored the goals in Munster. They won the Munster final. Donegal got the 2 goals in Ulster. They won it. Louth scored more goals than Meath. They won it. At the end of the day, Armagh, and we've highlighted it on this podcast several times, Armagh's inability to capitalise on goal chances. Yeah. That we highlighted, I remember, after the Antrim get, where they created about 6 goal-scoring chances, but took the handy fisted pint. And again, the last stage, in the first 6 minutes of the second half, they left 2 goal-scoring chances behind them. If they had scored at least 1, if they scored all 2, they'd probably be Ulster champions.
They'd no real, the only person that really stood up offensively was Connaughton.
Yeah, they're a bit
nothing else after that.
Bit light. Oisin O'Neill can kick a score, but it was Connaughton with his 6 points, 22 years of age, young player of the year. But it's another step forward for him. But if you think Turbot was injured, didn't play most of the game, they're missing Rian O'Neill. They actually didn't have as many men who could kick a score the way Donegal did. It
was evident. Rafferty obviously comes up and kicks his 2-pointer. As you mentioned, O'Neill kicks a couple of 2-pointers, but it didn't feel like every time you Connaughton get on the ball, he was just finding himself in these little pockets that if you committed to tackling him, you're going to foul him because his agility was unreal. But there was you brought on Soupy Campbell, who done really well for his 4th score, and then because he's that extravagant type player, it takes probably 2 shots that you're kind of going, oh, you shouldn't have took that. But and he was very unlucky for the foul, by the way, that he got done for overcarrying. There was just a massive pivotal moment for that time of the game.
Yeah, I suppose when you look at the stats about scoring, I was just looking at 9 of Donegal starting 15 scored, plus 3 subs. That's 12 players from Donegal on the scoring sheet.
And that's maybe what you're sort of getting out with the kicking game, Pat, because I sort of had the same feeling watching the first half in particular, that there was a pace to Donegal's attacks. Thompson might kick a 2-pointer, they'd get one into Murphy quick. Whereas I felt anytime Armagh got the ball in Donegal's half, it was like, okay, let's slow it right down. Lots more fist passing. And they were probably trying to work it to Connaughton. That was probably what their thinking was. Whereas Donegal were like, we can score quick here. I didn't feel Armagh had quick scores in them to the same extent.
You're right. In actual fact, and in that first half, and I wrote it down because I have it here, first half, Armagh build up so slow.
Yeah.
There were 2 points down, and here's the stat: They were 2 points down at half time, having had 61% possession, 61% possession and 2 points down. They just weren't getting their shots off. They weren't translating all that possession into scores.
Yeah, I thought they were dead. I just, the resolve of them, down by 7 points twice. Even in extra time, Donegal scored the goal. You're like, well, and I know the 2-pointer changes that blow a little bit, but still, like, the resolve of Armagh to come back was
brilliant
amazing.
character.
Yeah.
And they've done that so many times. But you always, like, you see when you're saying, like, Armagh were a bit slow on their build-up, Pat, like, why were they like that? Well, because if you look at what we done a little bit of a piece on, actually, what kind of Donegal do in regards to the defensive structure that you mightn't see from the naked eye. Like, you're kind of looking in going, right, okay, they just look like they're set, but they trap you. Like, they want you to come into certain zones and they swarm, like you would have seen the Tyrone team swarm and carry out around the middle of the field. They're swarming as soon as you come into that D, which they would have been really poor actually against Down. There were these gaps that were created that we done the visuals on in the last podcast, but they would swarm. They're built upon errors of the opposition coming in and turning over and then breaking.
Yeah.
Right. But the crucial thing is they've scorers from everywhere, and those scorers are getting into the right positions to get, like Thompson, for example. Lovely left peg. He's finding himself in his 80% scoring. Like Mogan, I agree. You know, you're into county player. You got to hit that with your right foot. I don't think he hesitated because it was he wanted to give. It was, he knows his strength. His I was like, hit it with your right foot.
He never fancied it.
So dominant with his left foot that he's gone, this is not my 80% hole. In a second, I'm going to revert it back. Now, I'm screaming, kick that with your right. Like, but they are very good at, if they, and in fairness, actually, they wobbled a little bit. There was a few shots that they took, particularly in the second half, where you're going, this is unusual. They're missing these scores, like they're having a few pot shots. That was maybe the pressure in terms of the game.
Like the one thing, I mean, and Donegal are now the Ulster champions, and like I said, the winners get to write the history.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it that Armagh lost nothing in defeat last Saturday night. And when you look at and you drill down into their performance, and you can say, there's a lot of improving to do. They don't have their best 15 starting. There's no doubt about that. Reno O'Neill coming back will be a major boost. There's no doubt about it. Tactically, the move of Ryan McHugh being man-marking Rory Grugan, that was the playmaker cancelled out. You drill further down, you look at the starting 6 Armagh forwards. 3 of them didn't score at all. They left 2 goal-scoring chances behind them, and they were beaten. They hit the post 3 times, and the goalie tipped over a 2-pointer from Reno O'Neill, and they were still only beaten by a point. So, like I said last week, I think there's 4 counties I see in contention for this year's All-Ireland, and I haven't changed my mind after this weekend, and that's Donegal, Armagh, Galway and Kerry. You can put it in whatever order you want.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Armagh have lost nothing in most people's eyes on the basis of a single point after extra time, really. You agree?
Armagh will, I'd prefer to be in the Armagh change room if they meet Donegal again. That hurt from that game will be massive for them. Donegal under McGuinness will I'm sure keep them on their toes, keep them grounded to an extent. Obviously there was a bit of an issue after the game, but if they now have basically took the trophy of Armagh's head as All-Ireland champions, they're going to the group stages thinking, right, okay, I see Mac Barrett had an interview after the game. He spoke about 10 games to win an All-Ireland, so they're obviously
thinking that way.
This is the milestone. We've won the Ulster. Let's get on to the next phase.
By the way, McGuinness's record, just to briefly pay tribute to it as manager, 5 Ulster titles in his 24, 25, 26 games, not sure exactly. 1 defeat against Monaghan in 13 the year after they won the All-Ireland. Like you were saying, Philly, earlier on, using the Murphy tactic and not saving it for a bigger game. He's literally the most possessed man in Ulster when it comes to that provincial title. It's an unbelievable record.
I think when you want to get to the top, you have to be greedy and you have to want to win everything, no matter what the competition is. And you're building a culture and a consistency of winning like the top counties have, like Kerry, like Dublin. And you're changing the narrative for the next generation that when you come here, you're coming to bring energy to win, and not to compete. And I think that's what he brings in abundance, probably more than any Donegal man I've ever seen.
Yeah, I have 20 points written down why Donegal won last week, but I have one circle, and that's Jimmy McGuinness' belief. And this is what he instills in. It's a simplistic thing, but it was the one thing that I remember as a player with Nicodawar, that belief he instilled into you. Belief in your own ability, belief in your teammates' ability, and belief that we could always win every game. And that is, anytime I've met Jimmy McGuinness, I just found there was something very Mick Dwyer-like about him. There was something very mesmeric or spiritual about him, that whatever he said, you felt, geez, if I had him in the dressing room, I'd be inspired by him. I believe whatever he'd tell me, I'd believe it. And you can see it in that squad. Picking guys. What did I read this week? Was it Kieran Moore? Was it with Brighton? Like players who at club level probably didn't play, are ordinary players, but once they put on that Donegal jersey, they buy into Jimmy's system, into his mantra, into his belief, and Jesus, they're brilliant.
Yeah, it makes it scary. Come here, just a word from you, Pat. Your eye on Oisín Connolly, 6 points. Like McGeaney said, he was the outstanding player on the pitch. And it's amazing, because they sort of look similar to each other in defence. I take Philly's point. There's probably more going on at times to the naked eye. But you've got a defence and it's set and there's not much on, and Armagh don't have loads of maybe kicking options. It's amazing his agility. He can just jink by someone and make it happen. And like that, for all the tactics in the world, someone who can just drop a shoulder, go by a man like Connolly is essential now more than ever.
Yeah, but there's no doubt about under the new rules, the players who can break the lines, the players who have pace, have that sidestep, have that jink, they're going to thrive in the modern game. And Connaughty is made for the modern game. He's a powerful, fast, direct runner. And like I said, he has that jinky. He was very good last week, and he was playing with limited support from the rest.
You just need a little bit of space when you've got the agility like him.
Jink around, and like you knew for the equalising point, he's never missing. But that's composure and just tapped it over, nice and simple.
If you look at the way forwards have changed, like we'd have looked at the full forward line for years, and you get the ball into them, they turn to take a man on and take a shot or go for goal. It's probably now changed because defensive structures are getting behind the ball, so you're facing the play. So you need a bit of you need to move the opposition's defence a little bit to create that little pocket, and you're seeing Connaughty, you're seeing McHugh, Paddy O'Shea, even Paddy Small against Meath, the power. It's just that first 5 kind of steps of acceleration.
Who's Paddy O'Shea?
Oh, sorry, Paddy Clifford.
He had a bit of power in his as well.
But it's just having those players that are low centre of gravity that can just move
when
around.
you're talking about defensive systems, at least I like to see innovation. But I was very impressed by Louth's defensive system against Meath, where, as you know, Meath are one of the best teams in the country with 2-point shooting. They've scored. I think there's 16 2-pointers in this year's championship. And the way Louth pushed their defence out beyond the arc to curb the threat of the 2-point shooter was very effective. And Meath yesterday were restricted to one 2-point score from play. Yeah. I thought it was a bit innovative. We see a lot of defences who are set deep, they're set very zonally, but this was a bit more flexible, a bit more fluid, and very effective.
Okay, I'll come to Loudmead in just one sec. So to sum up, high quality game, 2 high quality teams, and hopefully we see them do it again in Croke Park in a few months' time. The other thing to mention, I didn't want to lead with it because it's a pity if the melee at the end kind of dominates. Although the photos, have you seen the photos of this? I mean, oh my god! Like you could do an exhibition alone and all the photos and the flair and everything. So the footage of what actually happened is doing the rounds now, and so it's fairly clear that the full-time whistle goes and Donegal's McFadden Ferry, while everybody else is running on the pitch to celebrate with teammates, he decides to run over. He's about 15 metres in front of the Armagh bench and he gives it the all, hands up in their faces, about 10 metres away from the bench. Is bent at the knees like a proper have it. Someone who I don't know runs out from the Armagh bench. He's in a navy tracksuit and the shorts, and he throws a left hook at
Call it
Ferry.
Superman punch.
Gets him
MMA.
gets him in the face. And McFadden Ferry realizes at that point, I've bitten off a bit more here than I can chew. So he takes 5 steps back and he puts his hands up in the air as if to say, I'm not armed. You know what I mean? Listen, I'm sorry. But at that stage, there's like 4 or 5 other from the Armagh bench who are in after him as well. And I'd say they give him a bit of a pay. You can't see, but I'd say there are digs been thrown. And then obviously McGuinness McGuinness is trying to make peace, and Aidan Falker's trying to tell him, your man did this, you did this to it. Look, it's unfortunate.
It's not unfortunate. It's absolutely scandalous. But it reminded me too. It reminded me of the time of the Sunday game. I'd never forget it. I said, "This is hilarious." The famous fight between Meath and Mayo, and I remember having to do the analysis of it that night. And I said, should I treat this with the seriousness it deserved, and go through lamenting this tuggery and I said, Jesus, no. I said I'll treat it as a bit of fun because it was hilarious, the fighting, and I'd love to have been doing the commentary on the aftermatch. What I was surprised at, I didn't see the BBC coverage and I didn't see the
missing out, Pa.
I didn't. I actually no. I'll be watching it later on. I have it on, but I didn't see any of the post-match stuff on TV. And did the TV cameras cover it? Because I felt poor old Linda McGinley got the shot straw again last night in the Sunday game, and he had to tut an instant that there was no pictures of. I mean, these were disgraceful scenes. Players, mentors, or whoever was involved should be punished severely. It is a bad advertisement, and it's a shame after such a great. And this is the sad reality. I always remember what the day Galway and Armagh drew a couple of years ago in Croke Park, a cracking match, and then you had the saga, the fighting at the end. And I said, here I am trying to praise a great game, and we have these instances which overtake it. And it's not that they're overtaking how good the Ulster final was, but it just leaves a bad taste. But I can't understand how they're adding pictures that the Sunday game didn't have.
It was from a journalist's phone. I think it's Maurice Brosnan, the Examiner. His phone.
I mean, I would imagine. I would imagine that 99% of the time when a game is being covered by BBC, RT, or whoever, that the cameras stay focused on the pitch for a long time after. So I don't know. I think
the fans are on the pitch at that stage.
The fans obfuscated the view, so you couldn't see. So it was actually a camera phone from the stand side as opposed to where the cameras were. So I think that's the only thing. Look, I'm not pro clutching here. The lads, McFadden Ferry doing his thing, and then the lads running on and jumping at it. It's not good, but I mean, no one's upset by it. But the one kind of thing where you thought it had the potential to get messy was fans with flares in people's faces, and fan pushes the wrong player loses the head. That's the only point where it can get a bit messy.
Here's where I stand, and this is not holding me tongue here. McFadden Ferry deserves a box for celebrating in front of a bench. Is it wrong then to hit him? Of course it is, but he deserves a box, right?
He certainly wasn't saying, why did you hit me?
Yeah,
he understood why.
Right.
Yeah.
You've won, move in, go in. I don't remember ever celebrating in front of an opposition's face like that. You deserve a box from that.
I don't think McGuinness will be happy about that either.
I'm just going to go on to that.
Yeah.
If I was McGeaney, I'd be saying to the lads, in a way, I respect that you hit me slap, but at the end of the day, this is a fuel for the next time we meet them. I'm going to stick this on the walls in the change room before every match, and that pain and that what you felt, instead of striking out and hitting a fella, which could have, as you said, rolled out into something much more dangerous, we're going to use this now.
Yeah, but I think, maybe I'm old school, but
you're going a bit soft, Pa.
Perhaps, one thing, useless piece of information. I have never hit a guy in my life with a fist. I don't know what. I've often wondered, what is it like to connect with a fist to somebody's face? I've never done it.
Do you want to hit Philly for charity or something at the end of the summer?
I'll have a scrap at you if you want, Pa.
I was always brought up to be, as a sports person, to be magnanimous in victory and in defeat. And I abhor violence. I abhor anyone throwing a punch. I just think it's just wrong.
Yeah, no, sorry, I'm with you there. Like, I think Armagh player can run out from the pitch and tell him where to go, but like, it is another step to throw a left hook at the guy's face.
That's
and then,
never going to happen.
And then for the
fella
other,
runs onto the pitch like that, and he's going to go over and shake his hand.
push him. You can, but
not gonna
is there not a big difference between a push and someone throwing a dig? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a big enough thing to do to punch someone in the face.
For me, you know, when you...
Have you thrown a fist, Philly?
Oh, of course I have, yeah. Of course I have, yeah.
What's it like?
What's it like? I don't know. I've never really thought.
Deeply
what's
satisfying.
it like?
Deeply
At times,
satisfying.
depends on the colour of the jersey and the person that's wearing the jersey. But,
Will McGeaney say to his players, do you think we acted... Sorry, it's not fair to put words in McGeaney's mouth. If you were the manager of the Armagh team and one of the... I don't know even know who it was, runs on, throws a dig, 4 or 5 others pile on, and I'd say a few more were thrown. Would you be saying afterwards, we don't do that, that's wrong? Or would you would?
Yeah, I would. Like, in spectators' kind of eyes, I'm saying, give that fella a slap. Make sure he doesn't do that again.
Yeah.
As a manager, I'm saying that's something you need to say to your group, that's not acceptable because of the repercussions that can come from it.
Yeah, yeah.
So those 2 or 3 players that were involved in that incident now could be gone.
Yeah.
For the next couple of games, which is very important for the group stage because there's multiple games coming. They need the strength of their squad.
Unfortunately, in the modern game, goading and sledging has become part of the modern game. And while there are rules to penalise it, there's a blind eye turned far too often to all the goading and sledging. Yeah, the sooner you send off a guy for goading or sledging somebody,
you're not going to get rid of it, Pat. So you have to be able to deal with it better. You can't react. You have to respond. You have to say, hold on a second, will I damage my team by doing this?
Does McFadden Ferry... Has he broken a rule there? He probably doesn't get anything.
Well, the thing is, he could turn around and say, "Here, listen, I was celebrating to a family member that was behind the bench." You know, so. But at the end of the day, you would, as an opposition, as I said, if I was Armagh now and I was one of the defenders, I'd be like, I can't wait to get you onto the pitch.
Yeah. Sorry, Pat. Last word on it. Yeah.
No. I mean, it's just unacceptable, and you can't turn a blind to instance. You can't just turn a blind eye to instance like that. They should never be part and parcel of on the field, off the field. And like I said, too often in society now, violence is the norm. And for a night out, you see a fight. I just can't handle it, and I think anytime it should happen, it should be punished.
Yeah,
it should roll.
I'm with you. It is an extra step to throw a dig. Louth. 68 years waiting, and now they have to wait for second billing on this podcast. It's a disgrace. So 65,000 at Croke Park. I never thought I'd see 65,000 at Croke Park again for a Leinster final. So it was amazing. The novelty value factor to the 2 finalists obviously played into it. It's a great win for them, Philly, in that first half, Meath are on top in many ways. Louth have to weather their own performance, but the goals keep them in it. Sam Mulroy has to weather his misses, and then they win in such a commanding way. Those last 4, McGuinness afterwards was given out about Donegal not keeping the ball at the end of normal time. Louth gave an exhibition in how you kill off a game.
I wouldn't say exhibition. They were fighting fire, actually going backwards. And I heard Gio Brennan saying he wished Grimes was going the opposite way. And every time he goes back, me being a full back, goes back to the cornerback, I'm like, give it to somebody else, get it up the pitch. But look,
but it's a great, there was moments in the game. Win for them.
Yeah, there was moments in the game where I felt there was such a confidence in Louth's play, particularly the goal chances. The goals they scored. And Mulroy then having a bad third quarter and then turning that around. Yeah. That's confidence in itself, But
real confidence.
Kicking the ball in, we talked, Pat, about the kicking game. Let's say. For Donegal, Louth did have a kicking game. They kicked into the, even when, Meath had their defensive mass structure, they were kicking the ball in, and they were, it was so impressive to see a team kicking the ball in Croke Park into the full forward line, moving it around. But they had leaders step up. They had Lennon. They had who else? Grimes was very good attacking. And Mulroy, for me, I was like, oh, he's having a bit of an off period of the game here. They need him, And some of the scores he kicked were Jesus, they're a Dean Rock, a Shawnee O'Shea type big massive kicks, like, you know. So I think now what we're seeing in big games is that you must have the momentum at the right time of the game, you know, and that's what happened with Louth, I suppose, at the end of the game, where they were building up the momentum. Meath, again, very similar to Armagh, didn't really have big scorers. Costello stepped up a little bit, but then who else did they have? And they struggled then at the to have big players step up.
Yeah, Loud, Pat.
Well, you know, it's karma, isn't it? I was working on the Sunday game the day of the Leinster final in 2010. And you know, goddamn well, Joe, for a commentator and analyst, I mean, it's gold dust when something happens that's blindingly obvious and is totally wrong. And you knew when George Sheridan threw that ball over the line in 2010, you knew this is wrong. And we got great mileage. I remember, got great mileage out of TV program. And like, the whole aftermath was so badly handled by the GA, who ducked their responsibility, and by Meath, who should have offered a replay. So this is karma. This is getting justice after 15 years. I was absolutely thrilled. Look, I live and breathe sport, all sports. I live and breathe in particular GA, and I love the passion of the GA. And this is what I suppose no other sports, for the honour and glory, like Kickham, for the honour and glory of the little village, the county jersey, and just the sheer joy, the sense of joy, the scenes of the tears of joy, the emotion, the outpouring of celebration was just absolutely wonderful. It was you'd want to have a heart of stone to begrudge Louth their victory. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But and it wasn't. They deserved to. They were the better team. Why were they the better team? Look, experience, I think. And I think maybe Philly Louth, they've been in 3 Leinster finals. This was their 3rd Leinster final. Playing in Leinster finals is a great learning. They've played Kerry in the championship in the last 2 years. Now, got 2 bad hammerings, but good teams and good management take learnings from those defeats. And I just thought, you mentioned the game management again. And like, against Kildare, right? Kildare should have beaten them. Yeah. Kildare left 5 goal-scoring chances behind them to beat them. But the 2 things, the last 5 minutes of the Kildare match and the last couple of minutes yesterday were so similar. With 5 minutes to go, Kildare and Louth were level. And composure, game management, Louth outscored them 3-0 in the last. And yesterday the same, last 5 minutes, outscored them 3-0. They restricted Meath to 1 score in the last 23 minutes. And just little things. The hunger for success. In the second half, it was an amazing stat. I heard it in the Sunday game. They won 10 of 10 breaking balls. That's amazing. In that time of 4 minutes when they kept possession, 13 times out of the 60, 13 times they took the ball into the tackle and never got dispossessed. But you say, I'm a forward, so I always boil down. The team who scores most wins the game. That's still simple. With the similar possession in both halves, Louth had 10 shots at goal in the first half and had 18 shots at goal in the second half. They almost doubled the number of shots. He who speculated, you've got to speculate to accumulate, and they took their chances. And Samuel Roy, I watched him, and I remember I watched him in a championship game down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh when they were hammered by Cork during COVID, and I thought, wow, this was. And I actually did a piece on him in the Sunday game. He'd only just broken onto it. I thought he was amazing. But yesterday, the sign of a great team and the sign of a great player is when things are going badly, that the head doesn't drop. Yeah. Just after half-time, 4 shots at goal, 4 wides. And the next 3 shots, he scores 4 points.
That's amazing. It is. Because you said confidence, Philly. Like that's real confidence. That it's not, I'm swayed by what's happened in the 10 preceding minutes. It's built on deeper foundations, and he had it, And
you've probably heard a few managers in different codes, different sports, talk about the top players, that they don't just let one aspect of the game impact. Like you hear Pep Guardiola talking about Foden, and he says, this fella could have 2 or 3 shots and miss them, and then all of a sudden he scores the next goal. And he just doesn't register mistakes. It's what's next. Give me the next play. What's the next ball? What's my next job? And I think that's what the top players do really well. But the other players that are not at the top, they probably fold at their moments. But I think it's worth mentioning, probably a lot of Meath people are getting stick today because, did they celebrate too much when they bet Dublin? Like I've never been put on anybody's shoulders after winning an All-Ireland final, albeit you're in Croke Park and you don't really get fans of the pitch. But Meath's celebrations against Dublin was incredible. Like, you know, and you know, you could say, right, okay, there was merit to that. And they deserved it. But I can tell you, for me, that would be energy.
If you're allowed.
Again, yeah, if I was Ger Brennan, I'd be putting that clip up on the wall and saying, does this look like these lads are just in a Leinster final or they've actually won it? And I remember playing, I think it was Mayo one year, can't remember, it was 2016 or 17. I remember drawing, and we were so pissed off, and we were all kind of walking off the pitch, and you could see the Mayo players walking around and getting interviews. We go straight into the change room. Both teams in an All-Ireland final have a banquet. We go back to the hotel. We have a meal on our own. All the families, everybody else, the county boards, everybody's there. John Costello says a couple of things. We walk straight in, get our food, and straight home. And then there's video clips going around of Mayo actually having a banquet, being on the gargle, all that sort of stuff. Now, there might be absolutely nothing in that. But if you can get a game that we play, a competitive game of sport, is all about a game of chess. What can give you extra edges? What can give you that extra energy? And I would think that maybe Louth benefit that, but maybe Meath actually an impact them to an extent.
But lads, you know, just on a positive, you know, what I love about this podcast, I worked on the Sunday game for 30 years, and for 20 plus of those years, you were analysing and commentating on some awful, awful football, negative football, defensive football, boring football. And I was in my comments, I was replicating, and I was very negative, and I was very, very critical, and I was that over the years. And people would say, you're negative and you're critical. And there was a lot of times I used to question myself. I said, maybe I am being too critical, and maybe I should use the old weasel words and talk about intriguing and enthralling and a chess-like game of football. But you know, at the end of the day, I think you have to call something as you see it. And if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a fucking duck. If it's a bad match, it's a bad match. But since I started on this podcast, and since we started commentating on the 2025 Gaelic Football Championship, like that, as you alluded to earlier on, Joe, I've got my love back for the game. And I grew up, Gaelic football is my game. It's my sport. It's my passion. I love Gaelic football. There isn't an hour goes by that I don't think of Gaelic football. I lived and breathed Gaelic football. I was in Tubbercurry yesterday supporting Sligo against Tipperary. A sellout crowd of 2,000 in Tubbercurry. And now I can, for the first ever time, I can come on the podcast and say, isn't this brilliant? Gaelic football is back. Championship is back, all in full glory. I love it, I love it, I love it. Bring it on, bring it on, bring it on. But if there is one, just to finish on the final, if there is, isn't it a shame? It's like having all your Christmases together. We're getting matches coming left, right, centre, and it'll be over in a shot. And I think it's a complete own goal, but that's another day's work.
That's another podcast.
Oh, gee, that's a lot of podcasts. But look, it's been a brilliant championship. And it's this, after 6 weeks, and you say, it can't get better again. And then suddenly you get an Ulster final, and it's the best match of the year. Yeah. And I'm sure we're going to continue like that. So a happy camper, happy camper.
Okay, well, that's the note to finish on. Agreed. It's been really good. Were you coming in there? You're happy?
No, I agree with Pat. Yeah, not the challenge on
that. Very good. Pat Spillane, we'll let you go. Thanks, Emil.
Pleasure.
And Philly McMahon, great to have you in. Cheers, Philly.
Thanks for having me.
There you are. And as ever, our GAA coverage in Indo Sport is with thanks to AIB. They support GAA here on the Indo Sport podcast at the heart of Gaelic games across club and county. In 2025, they are celebrating a decade of sponsoring the All-Ireland Senior Football Championships. And as we've been discussing, it's turning into a hell of a championship. So AIB more excited than ever to bring fans closer to the action. You can check out #TheToughest for more.